Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. And joining me today on today's episode, someone who has been asked about for weeks, and he's back. Jimmy Watkins, OU alum, cleveland.com columnist. How you doing? And welcome back on another historic note. 14-0 for the Cavs. It's been a while since we talked to you. Let's just get your oversight on what has been going on with the Cavs to start the season.
Yeah, me and Mike Tyson making our big returns tonight, huh? They're all historic from this point. The Cavs broke the record for any winning streak at any point in the season tonight with their 14th straight win to start the year. My oversight is that I sounded like an idiot on a lot of our preseason pods. Everything sounded good during the preseason because everything always sounds good during the preseason. So naturally, I'm a cynic. I was just thinking yeah, this is all cool, but let's see what happens when we roll the balls out. You know what I mean? I think I was making the jokes about Kumbaya Kenny and who cares who's drawn up the plays in the huddle? Who cares whose clipboard it is? Who cares who takes all these shots? Who cares who the offense is built around? And then on a more serious note, we asked the question 1,000 times. Can you make this pivot to an Evan Mobley-centric offense or a more Evan Mobley-centric offense and still do the damage that you want to get done in the regular season? Is there how much change is Donovan and Darius really willing to stomach? Are you really going to be able to get these guys to play off the ball like the Warriors do? I just had a lot of questions, and I mean, we're only 14 games in, and we still have the playoffs. That is the ultimate determining factor for every team's success or failure. But to this point in the season, I feel like the Cavs and Kenny Atkinson have answered those questions about as resoundingly as you possibly can. Turns out, yeah, you can give Evan Mobley the keys or let him drive the car a little bit more often and, I don't know, win 13 straight games. He didn't play tonight, so you can't say that's what we were doing tonight. But yeah, you can do that. Turns out Donovan Mitchell is playing off the ball more than he ever has in his career. Him and Darius look way more comfortable sharing the offensive workload. The Cavs are a freaking machine. Every possession is either pick and roll, pass, 0.5 basketball, pass, drive, kick, either pass and then drive or pass and then another kick, and someone gets an open three, or they grab a rebound and throw a hit ahead or outrun, or one of the big men outruns the defense and they get an easy bucket, or you have all these shooters. I think before the game today, I counted 5 Cavs players with career high 3-point field goal percentages, and I think 4 or 5 dudes with another career high in 3-point field goal attempts. This is just everything that Kenny Atkinson told us about is happening, and it's working to the highest degree. This team is a heck of a lot of fun to watch right now. The Bulls, a little bit less fun to watch, but they were sharing the court with the Cavs tonight. So, yeah, incredible. They are a show. They're a show.
Yeah, and this is a team, obviously, the Bulls did challenge the Cavs at multiple times throughout the night. They were coming back and forth, running that fast-paced offense that they're known for, a team that I believe came into the game having the fastest-paced offense in the NBA. But it didn't really matter at the end of the day. And I want to do this, right? Jimmy, I have to rattle off the historic moments that were made tonight alone, right? You mentioned the 14th win of the season straight, the longest winning streak in Cavs franchise history. It doesn't matter what part of the season you want to talk about, the start of the season, in the middle, whatever. It had happened 3 other times, and I believe every other time had LeBron James on the court. Jimmy, we are getting away from saying without LeBron James. It is now just entirely franchise records. It is just entirely what this Cavs organization has been able to do. So, obviously, we said the 14th consecutive win. It was also their first win in the NBA Cup group play in East Group C. But With the 144 point total, because they won the game 144 to 126, Cleveland scored at least 130 points for a team record 6 times this season, and Jimmy, we're 14 games into the season, right? Also, the 14 wins in a row marks the only time in NBA history a coach has started a new tenure with a team and gone 14-0. Kenny Atkinson, ladies and gentlemen, right? You talk about Kumbaya Kenny and all the jokes you can make. It's working, right? This is the best start to a season since the Golden State Warriors started 24-0, and only 3 teams in NBA history have started a season better than 14-0. There are a couple other teams that also started 14-0, but 3 of them have started 15-0 or better. So, Jimmy, this is a historic team, historic run. How does it feel to be getting away from the LeBron James era quotes? Like it felt like a lot over the summer. It was like, okay, this is true, might be a stat, but you got to remember that LeBron James was on that team. Now it feels like we're into a new echelon, a new era of this Cavs franchise.
Yeah, I think that's a huge step forward for the franchise because, I mean, it's for the longest time, this franchise's history was entirely defined by LeBron. LeBron will and should always be the first thing you think of when you think of the Cavs. He brought them to what is this point their only championship. He is the greatest player who has ever worn the uniform. Probably will. I don't want to gaze too far in the future here. That's probably going to be the case for a pretty long time here. But it does, particularly after the second time he left, it was like kind of a reminder of, oh man, like what are the Cleveland Cavaliers without LeBron James? And they wandered through the wilderness for a couple of those years. And when obviously when you have a superstar, it's easier to have an identity. So when they trade for Donovan, that was the first step. And I think that one of the first year they played the Lakers and the Cavs, beat, I think Donovan had a big game. It was a home game and they beat the Lakers at home. That was a big moment. It's kind of just showing LeBron like, hey man, it's cool that you're here now, but people aren't just showing up because you're here anymore. Like we have our own thing going on. And now they're looking like, I still think to really separate themselves from LeBron's shadow, you need to make more noise in the playoffs. That's gonna be the theme of this podcast for the rest of the season, right? It's like, oh my God, this is happening. Oh my God, they look great. Oh my God, this stuff all looks like it could translate into a postseason run, but we need to see it. So that's still hanging over them a little bit. But man, it's a breath of fresh air for a fan base that has really only known one world. Because that, like, if we want to be honest about what those LeBron years were like, they're stressful, man. Like, I think you could make the case that this 14 game start is probably more enjoyable than any regular season stretch that the Cavs ever had with LeBron, because no matter what was happening, whether it was going well or not, there was just always this cloud that hangs over you with LeBron where nothing matters if you don't win a championship. Not only does nothing matter if you don't win a championship, LeBron might threaten to leave if you don't win a championship, especially when he was signing all those 1+1s, or someone might get traded. Someone you really love on the team might get traded if you don't win a championship. Now, this is to your point about having your own identity. This is like the anti-LeBron ethos. The Cavs could have, and some could have argued should have, after last year's playoff exit, blown it up to a degree, traded a piece of the core four. But Jared Allen said it in the locker room tonight. Kobe trusted Kenny, and by trusting Kenny, he trusted this group. They decided that all we really needed was a new set of eyes in here to get, like, they still think this Jared Allen Evan Mobley pairing can work. That's another thing that I was so wrong about before the season. Yes, they're a great defensive pairing. Yes, the Cavs have, impressive net ratings over the last 2 years with both of them on the floor, but like, can it work as an offense? They've got the number one offense in the freaking league, man. So yes, yes, it can work to the nth degree in that regard. It's just it's so impressive. It's so impressive, and it's so cool for Cavs fans um, to enjoy the regular season. I lived through that those LeBron years. Those regular season they never felt like this. Even again when it was going well, they didn't feel like this. The Cavs never really play. I mean, actually, ironically, 144, 126. That feels a little bit of LeBron era Cavsy because that team just didn't lock in on defense during the regular season. It was a lot of lazy stuff too, a lot of missed assignments or miscommunications, and then your superstar rolling his eyes at somebody else, even when it was his fault. That's not this team at all. I mean, this team plays with a ton of energy, is much more accountable than the LeBron-led Cavs teams. I'm not trying to like downplay how fun those playoff runs were, because when those Cavs teams were humming, they were incredible. But I think a lot of Cavs fans will agree with me when I say that I don't think that they ever quite enjoyed a regular season stretch the way that they are enjoying this one. It's just a completely different level of fun.
That, and it's the longest, Jimmy, but not to give you too much credit and not to tear yourself down enough, Jimmy, because I think before any other national beat or any other national reporter mentioned it, you caught my eye when you said before the season started that this Cavs team could wind up being the second seed, right? You might have said a lot of different things about how it could work, how it could happen, but you, I believe, were the first person that I had heard said that they could make a running for the second seed. And to this point, it looks like they could be 1A, 1B with the Boston Celtics. And to me, Jimmy, it talks a lot about how this team gets off to great starts, right? It feels like every night the Cavs get off to the races unless they come off a back-to-back or whatever it is, then they're a little bit sluggish. But tonight, again, a franchise record, right? The Cavs team was able to drop 49 points in the first quarter. That's the most in a regular season first quarter or quarter in general in franchise history, right? And we talk about how this Cavs team does that. Donovan Mitchell, the first 4 minutes of the game, he has 10 points. And that is how you get off to great starts, by your leader understanding, taking the temperature of the situation and realizing that if I get off to a great start, if I get this team going, I can then take a back seat and figure out and feel out or feel the vibe, as he mentioned after the game tonight, of where this team needs me to fill in. Is it passing? Is it defense? Is it scoring? What does it need? And that also talks about, you mentioned the passing, and Draymond Green even mentioned it after the Cavs played the Warriors, and Kenny Atkinson referenced it tonight. In his podcast, Draymond Green talked about how he literally felt like his head was buzzing from the way that he was turning his head every time the ball was moving for the Cavs. And the Cavs in that first quarter where they scored 49 points on 19 made field goals, they had 10 assists to go along with it. 6 of those coming from Darius Garland, their point guard, who also tallied a team high 15 points in that opening frame. Jimmy, obviously we've talked about it before, and Kenny Atkinson has talked about it as well. It's hard to come back from a deficit. And sure, the Chicago Bulls might have felt a little bad for themselves as they shot 50% from the field and 46.7% from three in that opening quarter with 34 points. But it's kind of hard to top a team shooting 86.4% from the field and 70% from long distance. And just, I want to get what you saw in that first quarter alone, because we're going to get into that middle portion where it was a little bit hazy, a little bit messy, and then we'll get back to that fourth quarter. But that first quarter set the tone for what this team can be and should be, no matter the team that they're playing.
Yeah, I was sitting next to Substack superstar Danny Cunningham on press row tonight, and I think I said it already on this pod, but I kept saying to him, man, they're a machine. It's like what I was talking about before, point 0.5 basketball, right? It's the concept of make a decision, catch the ball, make a decision, whatever the decision is, make it within 0.5 seconds. And okay, I have the ball. I'm either attacking a closeout or making the next pass, like in a snap second. They just make such quick decisions, and then of course it doesn't. They don't miss. They don't freaking miss, man. They're making every three they take, it feels like you look up at the Jumbotron and it just doesn't even look real. They're shooting 60-70% at three at times in this game. I think they're shooting close to 42 as a team for the season. Also, best mark in the NBA. And to your point earlier, like I did say that the Cavs had an opportunity to rack up some regular season wins this year. Frankly, that was always more about what I thought could happen around them than what they might do. I mean, I think we'll take these one thing at a time. You're seeing what's happening with teams like Milwaukee and Philly. The Joel Embiid availability issue has reached its peak. I mean, that team has built its entire franchise around this guy being an MVP level player. They can't even get him on the court. The Bucks have had a problem for 18 months now with their defense, and I don't know how they fix it. They're only getting older. Chris Middleton hasn't played a game yet. I think that's still true, but he's not solving all the problems that ail them right now, particularly not on defense. He's getting older. He hasn't moved his feet the way he used to. I did expect something of a coaching bump from Kenny just because by the end of last year, I mean, once you got guys like Max Strus and George Niang starting to talk to Chris about coaching strategy and stuff, that tells you that you're not in a very good place. So I think Kenny, what I'm writing about for the morning is that Kenny, there just seems to be a weight lifted off of some of these role player guys with Kenny. And I was at shoot around this morning talking to George Niang and Isaac Okoro, two picture-perfect cases of what I'm talking about right here. Isaac Okoro, we all know the story, right? He's the 3-and-D guy if he could just come around with the three, right? And teams leave him open both in the regular season and in the playoffs. And for most of his career, it's been you make enough, you get to stay on the court. You don't, you're getting yanked. George Niang, kind of the same thing in reverse. He's, this Swiss Army knife of a power forward, but if you're not making shots, that's kind of the main thing that you do here. So if you start missing them, we're going to have to yank you. And both of those guys were talking this morning about how they don't feel that way anymore with Kenny. Like George said the words, I'm paraphrasing. I will quote him directly in print, but I'm paraphrasing him now. It doesn't feel like if I miss a shot, I'm going to have to come out. And that just does, it just gives guys a world of freedom. George used the phrase, Kenny breathes confidence into guys. Isaac was talking about how Kenny stops him every morning in shoot around and shows him all the shots he didn't take that Kenny wanted him to take, trying to empower Isaac with confidence. And another thing that George mentioned is Kenny has these conversations with you one-on-one off to the side, not I think he said in front of the entire team once every 3 days, as that's his counterbalance. Now, another thing that we talked about a lot when Kenny got hired, right, was what new guys say about the new what guys say about the new coach will tell you a lot about what they thought about the old coach. And I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, and I'm not saying that JB Bickerstaff didn't try to speak confidence into Isaac Okoro, because we know he loved Isaac Okoro. He loved Isaac's defense, and he wanted so badly for Isaac to be the 3-and-D guy that the Cavs are still trying to make Isaac into. And, I mean, I sat through probably a dozen press conferences during the regular season last year where JB sang George's praises. And this could also all be a function of like, man, the playoffs just have higher pressure and your leashes will get shorter. This dynamic will exist again for both Isaac and George. If you get to the playoffs and you're missing shots the same way you did last year, Kenny may be forced to yank you guys too. But right now, there seems to be a way about Kenny's manner, and I think I'm for the purposes of this conversation, I'm talking about the way he breathes confidence into them and the way they don't feel like there's someone looking over their shoulder every time they shoot a jumper. But I think it's more about the more important piece here is what the second piece I mentioned, which is George saying he has these conversations with you off to the side in front, instead of like embarrassing you in front of the team, because by doing that, by building those one-on-one relationships, I think that gives Kenny more power to make the hard decisions down the line. by having an understanding with the players. And George can look back and say, again, let's say that something similar happens in the playoffs for any of these guys. But right now, these are the people I've talked to. I talked to this morning. But let's say George and Isaac struggle with their jumper again in the playoffs. Kenny has to either shorten their minutes or take them out of the rotation entirely. I think that's a much easier move to make when you have, it seems like Kenny has done a better job of building that base foundation with the role guys. And I think it was Isaac who said, once George, we talked to George first and then Isaac. So once George made the comment about talking to the player one-on-one instead of doing it in front of the team, I think it was actually Danny who asked Isaac about the same sort of thing. And Isaac was saying, yeah, it's a huge deal for the coach to have a relationship with you like that and not just a couple of guys. And I think it's totally normal for NBA coaches to have a different relationship with their superstars. I assume that's what Isaac means when he says a couple of guys. Totally normal for a coach to have a different relationship with their superstars than they have with their role players. But the tricky dance is you can't let the role players think that, right? You have to, it's understood that, I think everyone understands a little bit at this point in the NBA that the superstars are partners with the franchise at large, front office and coach. But the best coaches blur those lines and make everyone feel like they have ownership of the offense and the team in general. And I think that's where Kenny has shined. And that's where you're seeing these results. All these you cannot, here's the order of operations. People teach you bend your knees, flick your wrist, square your shoulders to the basket. The most important thing about making shots is before you shoot it, you think this is going in. And the Cavs are all thinking that way right now. I see it happening. I mean, it's chicken or the egg thing, as we always talk about. Good shooting needs confidence, but it also breeds confidence. But right now, I mean, there's every button Kenny Atkinson is pushing is working. I am blown away.
And Jimmy, to reiterate what you're talking about, like after the game tonight, Karis LeVert even mentioned exactly what you were talking about, saying that Kenny has given a leash much longer to the role players, and it's more so about learning through the mistakes that they might make rather than being pulled immediately after making said mistake. And you talk about being able to go to different guys at any point in a game. And throughout the last week, I think we've seen 3 completely new, completely different lineups that we hadn't seen before when the game happens. And that comes from the confidence that you talk about. It comes from being able to play and see how these guys are able to work together in different rotations. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about in detail when it comes to tonight's game is that Kenny Atkinson didn't immediately go, hey, okay, Evan Mobley's out, so that means Dean Wade, you're back into the starting lineup. Because I asked him after the game, I said, why did you go to George Niang in the starting lineup rather than having Dean Wade? And he said, well, I wanted to bring Dean Wade off the bench as a 5-man. Sure, great idea, great plan. We understand that. But he's done that before and had him start and still put him in the starting lineup as a backup 5-man, right? And played him as the 5. But instead, he wanted to empower George Niang, someone who hadn't played in a starting lineup to start the season, someone who actually has gotten probably the most criticism of any Cav that we've talked about throughout last season, in the offseason, and into this season, right? And sure, at points, it's been warranted. But tonight, I feel like he made an impact that the Cavs needed. And that goes into what we were talking about with the Chicago Bulls pulling back and pushing back on this Cavs team. And into that third quarter, it was looking a little wishy-washy, Jimmy. I didn't know how it was going to go. And obviously, I have been around this team enough and seen it that there's a confidence going into the fourth quarter that the Cavs are somehow going to figure it out if they can just keep the score close enough. George Niang had 11 of his 14 points in the third quarter, not only to keep the game close, but to keep the Cavs in the lead. And his ability to not only shoot the ball with a high clip, but also play defense on the other end was huge for the Cavs. He had a plus minus of just +7, but that doesn't only talk about what he was able to do defensively when it comes to switching, when it comes to being a powerhouse at the power forward position alongside Jared Allen. Filling in for Evan Mobley is never going to be an easy task, right? Jared Allen said it after the game. I miss playing with Evan every time he's not out there because not only the relationship that they have, but they've even gotten caught a couple of times looking for each other to make the play because of how much trust they have in one another. But Jimmy, the turnover battle was where this game was won when it comes to this team, right? The Cavs forced 13 turnovers against the Bulls in the second half. They created that into offense. And then in the fourth quarter, it was just a free for all coming and going when it came to the defense to offensive end. And I think that is what shows you how good and how this team has won different games, right? They started the game pretty poorly on offense or pretty poorly on defense and then switched it to pushing that back as the defensive identity that Kenny Atkinson has come in preaching that they need to still lean on, even if they're the 8th best team in the league in defensive rating. Top 10 in defensive rating still, and they still feel like there are areas that they can improve. Obviously, we saw some tonight. But Jimmy, how this team has been able to win, being able to lean on offense, being able to lean on defense, it's the perfect pairing, and it never feels like they get too far away from one or the other.
I mean, that's the dance that I'm interested in to watch Kenny do for the rest of the year, because the Cavs are playing with more pace. They're top 10 in pace. The Bulls are the fastest team in the league, so they played even faster tonight. But I think they came into this game ranked 10th in pace. They've been higher at certain points. You're going to sacrifice a little bit of your defensive identity when you play fast and when you're trying to shoot more threes. That's like you play fast, you're going to get a couple of helter-skelter turnovers. You're going to put your defense in a few bad positions. You might get your big men tired out over the course of the game, although I will say both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, two of the most elite conditioned big men. They run the floor as well, if not better, than any big man you'll see on a given night. And then with the increased three-point volume, you're going to get longer rebounds. That's going to kick breaks. You're going to get defenses that are running out ahead of you. So you're probably going to continue to see some slippage there. Part of the reason why the Cavs have been the number one with a bullet at times over the last 2 years, because they were playing slower. They were organizing games around their defense. Now they're kind of flipping it a little bit. They're organizing around their offense and they're maintaining their defensive principles. I mean, the best way people always say defense is their best offense is a good defense. The same is true of the other way around. Your best defense can be scoring the ball, making the other team take it out from the net, and being able to set your defense at the other end. To set defense is the best kind of defense you could possibly have, right? So that's interesting. You're watching the man. I mean, tonight specifically, you're missing Evan Mobley, a perennial all defensive team conversation guy for the rest of his career, former defensive player of the year, ballot placer. So tonight you're just trying to scrounge it together. And honestly, for as long as this streak goes, I think any win counts as a good win. It's gonna be fun. I think Kenny had an interesting comment before the game about how the players are asking to be coached harder or wanting to be shown some of their more critical clips despite the streak, because that shows a conscious effort to not believe your own hype, so to speak. But I almost asked Kenny this today. I think that to that point, they're not going to go 82-0. It will be and they were not going to say this now. Now they're loving it. There will be a weight lifted off of them when they do eventually lose a game, and it will be easier to look at this as more of a holistic process thing. Like I said, they're doing such a good job of getting the results they want and implementing the process that they're looking for right now. But when you get on a run like this, I'm not even ready to say history yet. They're they're not close enough yet. But you're on a historic run. You get to the fourth quarter, sometimes it's Donovan Mitchell time. And the NBA Cup maybe is a bad example to talk about this because you're trying to get a win regardless by however many points you get. But I think there are opportunities within the regular season. One of the best things about this start and the start of everyone else around them, Basketball Reference already gives them a 99% chance to get a top 2 seed in the East. You can use the rest of the regular season as a science experiment. You can use try more of these lineups that you don't see as much, see what works, see what doesn't, build more of this trust between people that you might not see together as often, and have a few more break glass in case of emergency options in the playoffs, right? But right now there's a tension around every fourth quarter that's close, right? Because you don't want to see the streak end. So the offense-defense balance is interesting to me, and the balance of the streak versus the process is another fun thing that to keep track of, however long this thing goes.
I mean, Jimmy, they are one win away from tying the second best start in NBA history. And it's insane to think about what this team has been able to do. And you talked a little bit about closing out games, right? And obviously we've seen it. It can be Donovan Mitchell. It can be Darius Garland. It can be Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, all of these different things. And tonight it was Donovan, right? He had 18 of his 37 points in the fourth quarter. And the Cavs, I believe it was with less than 3 minutes left in the game, ended up ballooning their lead from 5 to 18. And obviously that is because of the NBA Cup, and they understand that last year they were burned because of the point differential, and didn't get a spot in the knockout round because of it as a wild card team. But I mean, this is another instance where you get to see how good this team can be, right? And you talk about Donovan, Darius, Evan, Jarrett. Any night, it could be any of those guys. But you also add in some other players as well. The Cavs finished the game with 4 players scoring 20 points or more, and 5 players in double digits, in double figures. That is unheard of for a team that relied so heavily on Donovan Mitchell last year. I believe this might be the most that these guys have played in games this year. Jared Allen obviously picking up the slack, left by Evan Mobley being off the court 36 minutes. Darius and Donovan both at 34 minutes. And then nobody else is close to 30 minutes. Maybe you consider Dean Wade at 28.5, so 29 minutes. But the minute allocation is something that you talked about keeping these guys healthy, players around the league not being able to play and to start the year, injury management, all these different things. The minute allocation is going to be so key for them when it comes to elongating the stretches of dominance for their star players. And without that, they're not going to be able to make a playoff run as long as they want to. And Jimmy, I want to end it here because we've already gotten deep into the weeds on all these things. So I have 2 final questions for you. One a little bit more serious and one a little bit more fun. The first one is going to be the little bit more serious one when it comes to the Cavs winning streak. Obviously, they faced the Charlotte Hornets on Sunday. I chalk that up as a win. I feel like they can allow LaMelo Ball to do whatever he wants as long as they lock up everybody else around them, something that the Cavs had seen done against them in previous seasons, but I think they've been able to do that pretty well this year. But I also wanted to know from you, as well as your prediction for that game, but do you think it will help or hurt the Cavs if they win or lose, if they lose against the Boston Celtics on Tuesday? Because for me, I think it's too far into the season to say it's a fluke. I think it's too far into the season. The streak has gotten too deep, especially if they win 15 straight games. And the way that they've won will be different. And I think that shows how good this team can be and how far they think they can go. But I do still think that there will be people, there will be fans that are be like, well, they lost to Boston. It's going to be the same thing that happens last year when they end up in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, okay, two things here real quick. First of all, I want to say, to your point about the minutes allocation, that's the craziest part about all of this. Like, tonight is not an aberration. I don't think, quick basketball reference check, I know Donovan's hovering right around 30 minutes a game, and Darius is doing the same. I got a Karis LeVert page open real quick. Let's see here. Minutes per. The leader in minutes per game is Donovan, 30.9 minutes per game. And they are undefeated, and they have them and the Thunder are jockeying for the best point differential in the NBA. That is insane. That's crazy. That is like literally 2016 Warriors stuff where they're just beat, like the Warriors were beating everybody so badly that Steph didn't have to play fourth quarters. It's crazy. It's all-time stuff. I also just want to shout out Karis LeVert playing what Kenny Atkinson said is like darn near perfect basketball right now. Karis LeVert, this is why I had his page open before, for his career. Kenny's talked a lot about how he always wanted Karis to be a more efficient player. Karis LeVert, up until this season, had never had an effective field goal percentage higher than 52.8. Ironically, his rookie season, much lower usage and all that. He has 2 effective field goal percentage seasons over 50. So we're talking about it, kind of some empty calories type scoring here. 63.6% effective field goal percentage this season. Unreal. I think he had 22 tonight, hit like 4 or 5. He was 4 for 5 from 3 at one point. This guy can't miss. He's shooting a career high percentage from 3. He's only taking 8 shots a game. He's getting 4 assists tonight. I know that last year he was much more involved as a playmaker when Donovan and Darius were out. He developed a lot in that regard there. But that dude has been the picture of a 6-man this year. He's been incredible, efficient. I don't know how sustainable the shooting numbers are, but he's been unreal during this run, and he deserves his props. To your point about the Boston game, whether they win it or not, I just think that this team is going to have something to prove during the playoffs. I think at this point, knock on wood, they're going to win a lot of games, and if they keep managing the minutes this way, it increases their chances of staying healthy. It doesn't matter if they win 65 games and have the league's best point difference. Like, they just have something to prove during the playoffs because, frankly, they have always been a good regular season team. Their regular season numbers have always been impressive at their best. I mean, remember the January stretch last year with Donovan and Jarrett running the show? They were the best team in the league during that stretch. They had great stretches during their first year as well. The offense cratered in the playoffs. The spacing issues with Jarrett and Evan really spiked. The Isaac Okoro shooting issues really spiked. George Niang absolutely disappeared last year. So this team, I mean, there's good and bad to that. On the downside, and I think they know this, they can't convince anyone of anything right now. Even if they break the record, they will still, even to me, they will have something. I will pick the Celtics. If they start 30-0, I will pick the Celtics to beat them in a playoff series. I just will, because I've seen the proof of concept with the Celtics. I haven't with the Cavs. But for a team, I think that's free fuel. That's free bulletin board material. They'll channel that. They can still. How rare is this? You start 14-0 at least. I think they'll get 15. Then we'll see about Boston. But in my scenario, I'm saying you're starting 30-0, and I'm still saying you can't do it. And that will be by the way, I think that would be the prevailing opinion. They start 30-0, people are still picking Boston against them. I firmly believe that. So you get all this, you get this incredible streak, you get great standing in the playoffs, and you still get to play the nobody believes in us card. Come on. I think that's perfect. It's like Kenny Midas. Everything this coach touches turns to gold. We're winning all of our games while managing the minutes. This too big problem that everyone says is a problem. Yeah, we got the number 1 offense in the league. Don't worry about that. Our guards can't play together. I don't know about that. I think they're both Darius and Donovan just gleefully talking to each other in the locker room tonight about what position they would play in a Cavs Chiefs Super Bowl, because the Cavs are so good that Darius Garland is predicting Cavs Chiefs Super Bowl, not talking about the NBA Finals right now. the vibes have never been higher in that locker room than they have been right now.
All right, Jimmy. Fun question to end the podcast. What did you think of the NBA Cup court for the Cavs as we prepare for the unveiling of a different court on Sunday? To me, I am a fan of the court just because it wasn't a vibrant color. It was like a darker wine color that didn't like capture the eye entirely. It wasn't a distraction, and it blended in nicely. I thought it wasn't something that where you think about like these vibrant colors that kind of jump off the floor that could be considered distracting to shooters and all these different things. I think the Cavs did this one really well, and I'm looking forward to the City Edition jerseys and the floor that they have prepared for the Charlotte Hornets game.
I have a super unfun answer. I hate the NBA Cup courts in general. I don't like that we have different courts. I don't like that we have different jerseys. The Bulls beat spent about 5 minutes with Billy Donovan talking about the different ball that they're using for these games. Didn't seem to hurt anyone tonight, by the way. Neither of these teams could miss. But what is the point of all of this? We've already gone so far out of our way to communicate to viewers that this is a different thing and players are playing harder, and all the players are essentially telling you that, like, yeah, we're playing harder because of the money and we want to go to Vegas, which is fine. As long as you're playing harder, that's cool. We want to see like heightened levels of basketball. That's what we're here for. It's just it's too gimmicky. It's too gimmicky, man. Like, just roll the ball out and play. Not only do a lot of these courts look terrible, like the Celtics court with the deep green in it, so bad. The Raptors court with it's just like we're making these courts on 2K or something. This should be this is what happened. This is what you do with like outdoor courts. We're running a professional basketball business here, okay? Let's let's have some standards and let's. I think the NBA is bending over backwards to try and communicate to the viewers that, hey, this isn't your run-of-the-mill regular season game where players don't try as hard because, see, they're wearing a different uniform. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that's what I'll say. I tolerate the different courts. Jerseys are fine. Do whatever you want with jerseys. I tolerate the different courts. I'm here for the basketball.
I appreciate that. That's a very basketball take for somebody that is sometimes over the top with your takes. So I like that. I like that a lot. But Jimmy, this is a team going into Sunday with a chance to go 15-0. This is a team that has the chance to tie the record for the second best start in NBA history.
Every game is can't miss they're fun to watch regardless, but until they lose, every game is can't miss. Ride the wave, people.
And that's where we're going to end today's podcast, because we talk about NBA Cup and how they want to get more viewage and get people to try harder. The Cavs are going to get everybody's best shot until they lose. They have a target on their back. Darius Garland has said it. They are the hunted. They are no longer hunting. And I think that is the perfect description of what is going on and what is going to happen until they lose. So, like Jimmy said, it's must-see TV. And if the NBA wanted ratings, they sure are going to get them when it comes to this Cavaliers team. But with that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs Insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. This is where you can get information directly to your phone and send in questions each week for a new Hey Chris episode. To do this, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy. But we can tell you that the people who signed up stick around, because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast. It's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.